Yes. All right, good evening. We're learning Maseches Kesubos, Daf Yud. It just started becoming natural to not say almost like this week. Okay, that was my exciting update for the day. Tomorrow night is the Hespedim for. I didn't say that, but you're interrupting me, so give it a second, Michael. Relax. Tomorrow night is the Hespedim for Rav Levin. And it's at the same exact time, so it doesn't really make sense to do that. I think I may jump it like an hour earlier. I know that's a little annoying, but we'll have to see what I can do. But I definitely am not going to I'm definitely not going to coincide with that's for sure. So I'll just figure out the logistics. I'll probably do 7:30. I'll figure out what it is. It's not a long daf, and we'll figure it out. But I just want to make sure that anyone who wants to go is able to go.
What if we just do it 40 minutes before me?
Yeah, that's a possibility. And the second piece of news is that on Tuesday, I'll be on a plane during Daf Yomi. I'm probably just going to pre-record and post, but I don't know how the logistics for that will work out. I'll let you know. So we're on the top of Daf Yomi Aleph, and like yesterday at the end of the blot, which was really actually quite a complex sugya, we were trying to figure out a little bit about the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. And if you keep a hand on Daf Tes Vavam and Beis at the open of the Perek, you'll see there that there's an opinion of Rabbi Yoshua with a case where he says there was a field that used to belong to your father and I purchased it. And the Gemara yesterday gave one approach as to why this case was specifically this case. And now we're going to learn two more such iterations as to why the case that we learned on in this new Mishnah, in the new Perek, is exactly as it is. On the top of Yud Ches Amud Aleph, on the top line. And maybe our Mishnah should have taught the case a little bit differently. Maybe the case should have been Moder Rabbi Yoshua be'omer lechaver mana levisi mimecha upira asiv lach shehu neman. Maybe the case in our Mishnah should have been where a man says to his friend, "I lent you mana levisi mimecha. I borrowed a mana from you upira asiv lach, and I paid you back." Remember the principle that we were learning about hapesha asar hu hapesha hitir. So the pesha asar was the first comment, which is that I in fact owe you money, and the second gets him out of the mess, which is, and I paid you back. So says the Gemara, maybe we should say shehu neman, that's really what's going on in our Mishnah, and our Mishnah says that can't be, because the rest of our Mishnah says mishum dekabayla misnei seifa. What does the end of our Mishnah say, which makes this case impossible? It says im yesh edim shehu lova mimenu hu omer perasiv eino neman, that had there been edim, he would not have been neman. But says the Gemara, that can't be, because v'hakaim alon hamalves chaver beedim eino tzarach lifroa beedim lepara beedim. You don't have to pay with edim, and therefore by definition that can't be our Mishnah, because our Mishnah is talking about paying with edim. That's obviously not what the case that's in our Mishnah. So then the Gemara suggests another possibility. We're 8 lines down, and says the Gemara, maybe we can teach yet another possible permutation of our Mishnah, that maybe I have 100 of your father. That's the pesha asar. He's admitting that he owes money to someone. The pras, and I paid him back half. I know it's a strange language of and I ate. It's really I made him eat. It's hechil. What? I fed him. Right. So that's where the grammar comes in from grade school, depending on what grade school you went to. It really does depend. I went to Hillel Torah, so I learned about some of these things. I don't remember any of it, but I know that this word means that he fed him, and it means that money was paid back. Maybe that's the case of our Mishnah. And says the Gemara, that does not work. It can't be that that's the case, where it's pesha asar, which is also pesha hitir in this case. Why not? Because ali b'daman. Who is that like? Now we're going to actually learn the rough sketch of the brisa before the brisa, and here's the rough sketch. If it's according to the Rabbanan, how do the Rabbanan look at a case like this? This is the same as Hashavas Aveda. It's no different than returning an object. I'm just saying I owe you money, so here's the money that I owe you. We equate this return of a loan. To Hashavas Aveda. And Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, if it was according to Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, he holds that actually a shvua would need to be taken in this case, because this is a case that we refer to in the learning world as modeh b'miktzah satayna. What does this guy admit? What was the case here? I borrowed 100. I paid you back half, meaning I agree that I'm giving you half. I only owe you half. So he's modeh b'miktzah satayna. Generally throughout Shas, when it's modeh b'miktzah satayna, the halacha is you have to make a shvua. So says the Gemara, if he holds like the Rabbanan, then it's like Hashavas Aveda. That's not our case. If he holds like Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, then he's requiring a shvua. Our Mishnah doesn't talk about shvua, so it can't be like that either. What is the bigger Mari Makom here, says the Gemara, Detanya, third of the way down in Chesed Aleph. What is the Brisa, right? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, Pamim she'adam nishbal tainas atzmo. There are times that a person has to make a shvua even on his own taina. What's the case? Says the Gemara, quoting this Brisa, Ketzad, Mana le'avicha biyadi v'he'echaltiv pras. If I really owed your father 100, but I fed him, I paid him back half, harei zen nishba v'zehu shenishbal tainas atzmo. That's where a person, when they're making their own taina, where they have to actually make a shvua. But that's only according to the Tanakama. So here's where we see these two shitas that are playing out properly. And really, if we pause right here, what we therefore see is Rabbi Yoshua in our Mishnah is not aligned like either of the shitas. He's not aligned like the Tanakama who's talking about Hashavas Aveda, and he's not aligned like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov who requires a shvua. Therefore, our Mishnah, Rabbi Yoshua, can't be this case either of I borrowed 100 from your father and I paid him back half. It's impossible. Now we're going to get into a sugya within a side sugya, and that is this right here, which is this last shita, this last brisa that we just learned. What did it say there? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov lesle meshiv avedo pater. Does Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov ever have a case like this where he views it as hashavas aveda and not as making a shua b'tainas atzmo? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, what was Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov talking about over here? Betoa no katan, where there was a child who made the claim. We're going to see soon that this word katan is a misunderstood word. It doesn't mean child in this case, but right now we're assuming that it means a child. Says the Gemara, wait, a katan never makes a shvua. We don't make a shvua if a child is the one who makes the claim. Says the Gemara, you're absolutely right. In this context, what does katan mean? My katan, and the Gemara answers that we're talking about a gadol, because that's not confusing, right? When you call the katan a gadol, then that's confusing. Asks the Gemara, well, then why did you do that? Why did you call this guy a katan? He's 25 years old. Why did you call him a katan? He's a gadol. Says the Gemara, because relative to the other players in the story, he was the child. What was the case? When it comes to his father's wealth, his father's estate, katanu. Okay, but in halachic terminology, a katan, we just learned Yevamos. Katan, aktana. We even had a bogeres and a nara. We chiseled down all the way down to the month mark. 12 and 6 months. Everything is so. He's a katan. He might be a grown man with a family, but he's still a katan. Yeah, maybe he was a nar at that point. I don't know how old he was. I have no idea. But he was probably not a nar. So we see this application as well, where it's referring to him as a katan, but it's not actually a katan, and really it's mili da'aviv. Says the Gemara, hold on one second. Ihachi, if it's true that the son was representing the claims of his father, then that breaks what our brisa was talking about. We had said, and Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov presented like this, what is a tainas atzmo where you make a shvuah? And we gave the answer. Says the Gemara, Ihachi, if it's the son talking about the father, it's tainas atzmo. That's not tainas atzmo. It's tainas acherimu. Then he's talking about somebody else. That's not the same case. That's not what we're talking about. Our brisa was talking about tainas atzmo. But if you're saying that the child was giving a taina for his father, that's tainas acherim. He's speaking about someone else's money. And what do we know about tainas acherim v'odas atzmo? That's normal. Kol hi, in every case, we have ta'anasa, tainas acherim v'odas atzmo ninu. We're always talking like that in Bezdin. One guy says, you owe me X, and the other guy says, okay, fine, here's the money, or not, whatever the case. That's a classical case, but that's not hodas atzmo. That's not our case. Ella, you're right. Says the Gemara, what is going on with this brisa between the Chachamim and Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? The Gemara says 6 lines, 5 lines from the bottom, Hacha b'di Rabba kamiflagi. Really what they're arguing about is the shita of Rabba. Dama Rabba says, why is it that we have a Torah law that when a person is modeh to half of the taina, that when he's modeh to half the taina yishava, that he should make a shvua? So the Gemara says, and this is a principle that we need to recall throughout Shas. This will come up a lot, certainly starting now, really not so much in the past, but certainly as we get into Nezikin and Dinei Mamanis. What is this principle? Chazaka, it's a halachic chazaka. Ein adam me'is panav bifnei bal chova. People, the psychology of human beings is that they will not walk up to a person from whom they borrowed money, look them in the face and say, I borrowed nothing from you. People don't do that. Maybe today things have changed. The brazenness has changed. What? Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm not questioning the halachic chazaka. I'm just, if you're a regular person, the chazaka applies. The chazaka is a halachic assumption, is that a person will never lie in the face of the lender. If you lent me $1,000, I'll never look at you in the face and say, what are you talking about? You never lent me money. Because you look at me like, what are you talking about? I have a carbon of the check. What are you talking about? It's clear. The psychology of the Gemara is, the Chazaka is that people don't lie in the face of their lender. They just don't do it. The borrower will not lie in the face of the lender. And I'm just saying that societally, that may not be true anymore. But if you're a regular, normal person, you have a normal boundary that your brain doesn't let you cross it to say, what are you talking about? It's not true. So this is a halachic Chazaka. And the Gemara says as follows. And this is an explanation of Rabbah, the explanation of the Svara. If a guy wanted to lie, he really should have rejected. He should have said, you owe me nothing. But he couldn't. But he couldn't because, again, that brazenness is not, we're not that brazen. And the Svara continues on the top of Yochel Amud Beis. And if he was really guilty, he should have admitted everything. Why wouldn't he admit everything? Because he wanted to postpone his payments a little bit. When I get enough money, I'll pay everybody back. In that case, when a guy is only being modeh b'miktsas hatayna, the reason he has to make a shvua is because he's like kind of threading the needle. It's easy to lie on one part of this, which is I'm not going to lie and say I never borrowed from you, but I might lie and say I only owe you half. So when a person says half, we need to push him. And what is the push? We're going to force a shvua on him so that if he really does owe the whole thing, he'll be like, okay, but a shvua, that's too much, and I'm not going to lie anymore because the consequences for shvuas are severe. So therefore, that's how we kind of keep him honest, is that we force him to make a shvua. Whenever a person's modeh b'miktsas hatayna, we instantly assume that he has to make a shvua, and that shvua is meant to keep him honest. That's the halachic system of, on the one hand, you have the chazaka of ein adam meiz panav bifnei bal chobo, and at the same time, so that he doesn't lie on the flip side and say, I owe you nothing, or say, I only owe you half, just to keep him honest, he has to make a shvua. Now, how does that play out with our conversation? So here's how the two Tanaim would hold based on Rabbah's concern. Fourth line down. Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Savar, Loshna beno, Loshna bo, Veloshna bibno. It doesn't make a difference if it's the father talking or the son talking. In both cases, Eino Meiz. The halachic assumption of Ein Adam Meiz Panav applies to father and son alike. V'hilkach lav meishiv aveda have. It's like the guy making the taina on his own. If the father and son are the same. If the child knows that his father took a loan, he doesn't have the chutzpah still. He's got the paperwork. There's a paper. He knows he borrowed money. He's not going to look the guy in the face and say, I borrowed nothing. And it cannot be a case of meishiv aveda. It's a regular modeh b'miktsas hatayna case. And therefore, he requires a shvua. V'rabbanan sabre bohu de'eino meiz. Only the person who actually borrowed the money, the father in this case is the one who borrowed the money. Aval bibno, the son who's a step removed from the malveh, from the lender, there, if he's a bit of a chutzpah, he might be meiz. That's what the Gemara says. Umidlo heiz, and because he wasn't meiz, and he did admit to half, he didn't totally shut him out. It must be that he's telling the truth, and therefore it's kimeshiv aveda, it's meshiv aveda have, and that is what the machlokas is between. Again, this is a side sugya, but the ikar part of our Gemara, we learned two cases already today, and the two cases teach us that the level of specificity in our Mishnah as to what Rabbi Yeshua was talking about, where he said, is that a pesha asaru, a pesha hitir applies in that classical case specifically there, and these other cases could not be Rabbi Yeshua. They may be true, but they're not Rabbi Yeshua's shita, and therefore the Gemara concludes that our Mishnah is accurate in the case that it presented for Rabbi Yeshua. That brings us to a new Mishnah. We're going to actually be wrapping up until about a third of the way down on Yotes Amud Aleph at the word Gufa. Let's start this next Mishnah. There are Eidim who see their own signatures on a document and they say, yes, that's my handwriting. Aval, and then they qualify. Now we have to ask, do both comments count? Does their first comment count, the evidence that this is my handwriting, A, and then the qualification of, but I was compromised? Aval, maybe anusim hayinu, we were forced. K'tanam hayinu, I signed it as a child. Psule edus hayinu, we were related to one another. So it says the Gemara, hare'elu ne'emanin, this is considered to be ne'eman. In other words, we accept both points. Hapesha asar, hu hapesha hitir. Namely, yes, that's my handwriting, which means that the document should be valid. However, it's not valid because the signatures were invalid because there was a pressure on me to sign. So it's two, right? It's pesha asar. Yeah, it says you owe money because but it does. The document's not valid. Then says the Gemara, but if I wasn't testifying that was my signature, if Eidim came in and said those are his signatures, they said it's my signature, or we have We have a graphologist on time. It's the same exact signature to another star that I signed last week. It looks exactly the same. They overlay the perfect match. If it's not me talking, if there's edus or physical evidence of my signature elsewhere, eina ne'emanin, then the second part of my statement is not believed. And then how would it play out? So there's two steps here, and we have to make sure we have clarity here. Step number one, I look at a document. This is my signature. If I then say, but it really wasn't valid, Tanakama says good to go. What's the qualification of the Gemara? The Mishnah says, but if other witnesses were there to see that that was your signature, then we don't trust your second comment that the signature was poor, and then your signature was valid, and therefore the star counts. Amar Rami Bar Chama. There are two possible ways to understand this line of Rami Bar Chama. The Gemara will present both cases. We're not sure if when Rami Bar Chama gave shiur, if this line that he said was talking about the seifa of the Mishnah, or if it was talking about the reisha of the Mishnah. He gives a qualification. We're not sure where his qualification applies. Says the Gemara, Amar Rami Bar Chama, Lo Shanu, take a look at Rashi. Rashi, right as the Gemara opens, a quarter of the way down in Rashi's Gemara, Lo Shanu, so that's the seifa. Rami Bar Chama says, we did not learn that a person whose handwriting was found elsewhere and therefore valid, that we therefore don't trust him to reject his own handwriting. Oh, so where do we know that that's true? Lo shanu ela amru anusim hainu machmas mamon. That's only true when they say that they were paid off. Aval anusim hainu machmas nefashos. If they were threatened by death, oh, someone's going to kill you if you don't sign here. So then hare elu ne'eman. Then we do trust those signatures. Amar le Rava kol kimine. That what?
Either your brains or your signature on paper.
We're going to see a wild sheet on the top of the next page that says you should die. Yeah, we don't paskin that way. It's a misunderstanding of Reb Chizda, but the Gemara does present that way. Of course, that's not how we paskin. We have only 3-4 scenarios where we're supposed to die. The Gemara will speak about those. Obviously, the Gimel Mitzvahs Hari Yavor, and whenever there's a massive Chil Hashem with a minyan, any other that even by Dini Derabanan, there's some shitas. Okay, let's get back to the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Amar le Rava kol kimine." That's a little bit much, and he says, "How can that be?" Kevan shehigid. Once a person gives testimony, shuvena chozer magid, he can't go back and give a second testimony. So even if he gave that first testimony under duress, okay, but kevan shehigid shuvena chozer. I mean, in American law, we have this about cases that are tried, like double jeopardy. Like you can't try the same case twice. But that's not quite this, because this is on one person's ages. Absolutely, you can. That you might be perjured. That's perjury, but we don't even allow for that. That's not a mitzias. That's what I'm saying. It's not about the case. It's about the testimony, the narrower aspect. And the Gemara says, "What? Yeah, then you're done. Then you're done." And of course, when we do drisha v'chakira, we're like asking a billion questions. We're like, where exactly were you? Everything is so nuanced. So like, because the questions are so specific, so therefore it's less likely that a person is going to lie. And if they recant, they're done for. And says the Gemara, Kevan shehigid, once the testimony leaves your mouth, shuvenu chozer magid. So it can't be that by nefashos we then say, oh, we all of a sudden we trust him. It doesn't make sense. So says the Gemara, v'chitema, maybe you'll say, hani mili al peh. Maybe we'll say, when do we say Kevan shehigid shuvenu chozer magid? That's al peh. That's by verbal testimony about b'shtar lo, but on a document, maybe the rule doesn't apply. The rule of Kevan shehigid shuvenu chozer magid, maybe it doesn't apply to a star. That's not true. Halfway down, Yud Chesam Beis, v'amreish lakish. That if a person signs on a star, it's no different than them having been investigated and interrogated in Bezdin, which is al peh, which means that star and peh are equal as it relates to the din of kevan shehigid shuvenu magid. Kevan shehigid shuvenu magid. Shuvenu chozer magid. So therefore, that can't be. Ella, we have to totally re-understand Rami Bar Chama. We thought Rami Bar Chama was talking about the seifa, where he said there was an ones and he was forced to sign. Says the Gemara, that's really not correct. 2/3 of the way down. Ela ki itmar, when there wasn't a memra, when there was a statement by Rami Bar Chama, aresha itmar. It was talking about the beginning of our Mishnah. What did it say in the beginning of our Mishnah? Hare elu ne'emanin, hapesha asar hapesh yitr. He said, yes, that's my signature on the star. However, it was a bad signature. We believe him. So we said, Harei Ne'emanim. And on that, Rami Bar Chama says, Rami Bar Chama, Lo Shanu El Sha'amru Anusin Hainu Machmas Nefashos. The only reason that that's true is because there was an ones that was Machmas Nefashos. That's why there was any Ne'emanus. Aval, Amru anusin haynu machmas mamon ein ne'eman. But if a person says that they were anusin machmas mamon, that they were forced to because of a bribery, whatever it was, ein ne'eman, and we don't believe him. So my time, what's the difference with money? Because says the Gemara, another Shas concept again, Shas kata. Pretty much every daf we've learned so far has a massive Shas concept. Here's another one. Ein adam mesim atzmo rasha. It's pleading the fifth, but in a slightly different iteration. We're not even registering. We're not even registering what you're saying. You cannot walk into Bezdin and say, I'm a Russia. That's just not the way that it works. And you're saying that you agreed to take a bribe and therefore nobody's going to even believe you. Ein adam mesim atzmo rasha. That's not even possible. Rashi, 3 lines into the wide lines. Ein adam mesim atzmo rasha. Eino ne'eman lifsol es atzmo mechazkaso. Dekarov huesel atzmo. Dekarov pasol le'edus. The lumdus of saying that Ein adam mesim atzmo rasha is that I can't give evidence, testimony about me because I'm related to me. So I can't walk into Bezdin and say, Phil did a terrible, I'm not Neman to do that. I'm not allowed to give edus that apostles me. It's not this like lofty idea. It's a halachic idea that I cannot bring myself to the point of apostling myself. Again, it's not like this touchy-feely thing. It's halachic. I'm a karov eitzel atzmo. I'm related to me, and therefore I cannot paskin on myself. I also cannot say I took a bribe. So I cannot walk into Bezdin and say that. Therefore, this excuse that the Gemara says, yeah, there were my signatures, but I took money. No one believes you. Tanu Rabban, and the Brisa writes, Ein ne'eman in leposlo divi Reb Meir. Now Rashi explains. We're not gonna. We can read the Rashi. Rashi's 5 lines into the wide lines. Rashi says, Ein ne'eman in leposlo in the name of Reb Meir. That's what the Gemara says. Rashi says, Aresha de Masnisan Palik. He's arguing with the Reish of our Mishnah. Now, our Mishnah presented only one opinion. But Rav Meir is coming in and saying, I disagree with the Reish of our. What did the Reish of our Mishnah say? Pesha asar, pesha hitir. Yes, they're my signatures, but I'm going to be matir and say that those signatures were bad. Says Rav Meir, I'm not makabel. Ein ne'emanim. We don't believe the second part of your comment. Ha-pesha asar, yeah, I agree that those are your signatures, but you can't come back afterwards and say, I was a kata and I was an anus. You can't say any of that. Okay, so we have to figure out why in a moment. Let's continue the brisa. The chachamim omrim ne'emanim, like the Tanakam of our Mishnah. Now, bishlam al Rabbanan, we understand the rationale for the Rabbanan to say that you're ne'eman in the case of pesha asar, pesha hitir, because kita amayhu she'a pesha asar hu pesha hitir. We allow for me to first create a scenario of problem and solve that problem all on my lonesome. That's easy. Yes, those are my signatures. Shtar is good. But my signatures were bad. Shtar is not bad again. We allow for that. We understand the Rabbanan. What's complex is the sheet of Rav Meir, because Rav Meir seems to paint this picture of, yes, we believe the first part of your sentence. Yes, those are my signatures. Rav Meir says, stop, I don't want to hear anything else. Those are your signatures. You want to qualify now that you were a katan? Too bad, you're done. You're done. The shtar is valid, your signatures are kosher. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. And the Rav Meir, my time, why did Rav Meir only trust the first part of my comment to say that it's my signatures, but not the qualifications of that comment, which is that my signature is bad? Beishlama, I understand, says the Gemara, I understand why we did not accept Psule Edus. It can't be Psule Edus because Malve Gufe Meikara Medak Daikum Umechase. The Malve, the lender, nobody lends out money without a research project. When I was signing up to be a mole, I took out a loan from Rabbi First, they grilled me, and I had to write 60 post-dated checks to pay the whole thing back. They grilled me. Were they a besuffic about me? And I had a co-signer. It was a whole arichos. The Malvin knows what they're up against. They know. There's no way that the guy who signed that shtar of a Malvin was a bad guy. So says the Gemara, Rav Meir is saying, Bishlam Absule Edus, Malvin Gufe Meikar Meida Dagim. I know exactly who's signing. I have no smekos about him. You want to come back now and say you're a bad guy? I don't even believe you. Done. Ktanim Nami, even in regards to a katan, Rav Meir says, we're not going to believe that kid either. Why? Kid Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Damar Reish Lakish, Chazaka, top of Yitzhak Aleph, Ein ha'edim chosman al ashtar elim kain na'aseh begadol. Done. End of conversation. Kids don't sign shtaros. So Rav Meir says, I understand all of that. But where is the thorn in the side of the sheet of Rav Meir? Where he believes the claim that it's my signature, but ignores the qualification that there was a psul. It's in this case on the second line, New Testament Aleph, Ella, Anusin, my taima. If the chosman, if the signers were forced, if there was an ones, so then why doesn't Rav Meir believe them? Says the Gemara, and this was the crazy answer, Michael, that I was telling you about. Amar Rav Chizda, because Kasav Rav Meir, Eidim Sha'amr Lem Chasmu Sheker V'al Taharogu, sign so that I don't kill you. Yehargu V'al Yechasmu Sheker. That's unbelievable. How is that even remotely possible? And the Gemara rejects this outright. Amar le Rava, hold on 1 second. This is basics. Let's say that we were that they came over to us to ask us a shaila. They're holding a gun to my head. Should I sign? Should I not sign? Go sign the thing and don't get killed. After all, we know the famed principle of the 3 cardinal rules. There are only 3 things that we die for, and signing a document isn't one of them. So says the Gemara, now, after the fact, Rav Meir, that they're signed, why did you sign it? I know exactly why you signed it. You did exactly what you should have done. It was because I signed it, of course. Pashas, it says the Gemara, that cannot be what Rav Meir means. By the way, we don't have time for this, but what was Rav Chifta talking about? What a crazy Havamina. You're supposed to die to sign a document? Okay, not now, but that's his shita. Says the Gemara's final response. At the time of Rav Meir, what is the reason why Rav Meir, in the brisa that was presented at the very bottom of Yud Ches Amud Beis, why does he say that we break up the comment of the signers, the signatories? I say, yes, that's my signature, but we don't listen to my qualification that I was an anus or I was a puzzle. Why not? Says the Gemara, Elataima de Rav Meir, Kid Rav Huna Amar Rav. He is holding like the shita of Rav. Of course, Rav Meir lived well before Rav. Obviously, the Gemara is just putting in information. The names it was only presented after. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, Mode bishtar shekatzvo, ein tzarich lekaimo. Rav has a principle. We're not going to learn about this now. We're going to learn about this. We learned about it a little bit in Shabbos. We'll learn about it more in Bava Metzia. Says the Gemara that Rav has a principle. The moment that someone says that's my signature, we don't have to do any more research. We instantly trust that signature. Now, obviously, that requires learning. That requires lumdus. We have to understand what was bothering Rav, that he had to go that far. Isn't it bad evidence for me to say that it's my signature, but I didn't mean to? We got to figure out what Rav's saying, but that's not for now. We're going to stop right here at Gufa tomorrow night. I'll send out a text for when shiur will be tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.